Hello, I am Adam.
And I'm Philip. Welcome to the Gryphon Podcast. Today is Monday, February 8th.
The students of this month are Ben Cohen, Xavier Ng, Luca Kestenband, and Richard Lee.
Congratulations!
Phys ed classes are switching, and these are the switches. 7-1 has futsal, 7-2 has ball hockey, 7-3 and 8-1 have basketball. 8-2 has hockey, 8-3 has strength and conditioning.
Last time we had hockey, and it was a lot of fun. On the 8th, we had the birthday of Jake Bach and Lucas Nanji. On the 9th, we had the birthday of Matt Kurthers and Winter Sontag. On February the 13th, we had the birthday of Jerry Han.
Hi, so hello everyone. Welcome to the Gryphon Podcast. Today we have Marco Timpano with us for this podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having me, gentlemen.
So when did you get into podcasting?
So that's a great question, Philip. So for me, I'm an actor and a writer. And as someone who works in that field, oftentimes there's lulls in work that comes to you or that you're able to audition for. And because I have a background in broadcast journalism, that's what I studied at school and college and university, I decided to jump into this new field that was sort of making waves called podcasting. And so I teamed up with a friend and we produced a show called The Insomnia Project because we both found that we had we would often face insomnia, so we couldn't sleep. So we thought, there's not a podcast for us out there. Why don't we create the podcast we wish that was there for us? And that's what we did. And so we named it The Insomnia Project.
Mm-hmm. Now, clearly you've been podcasting for a while. What is your favorite part about it? What makes you want to get up and do it?
Oh, that's such a great question, Adam. Okay, so for me, podcasting, it's a true expression, creative expression. So you have no one to answer to but yourself when you podcast. And so whatever you want to put on an audio track and release to people who may listen to you, you're able to do so. So I love the creativity that is involved in podcasting. Oftentimes when I'm performing a role as an actor, I have to listen to a director and there's a script already written. I get to do all that myself. So that's one of the things I love. I also love hearing from my listeners. So I have over 1 million listens with the Insomnia Project. And at least once a week, I'll get some information from a listener who said the podcast has really helped them fall asleep. The podcast has helped them through pandemic times because we're just talking about very calm, tranquil things. We're not talking about anything that is too exciting. And so when they're having a day that's just too much, and they're filled with anxiety, they will listen to the Insomnia Project. So I love hearing from the listeners as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what are some tips you want to share from your book, and what is your advice for beginner podcasters?
Okay, before I do that, let me ask you, what is the best tip each of you received? Because I understand you read my book. So let me find out, what is the best tip you received from my book?
The best tip for me really was to just relax, and that when mistakes will happen and that you can fix them. So really, the first day, besides having the echo on our podcast, there's also some cutoffs.
Sure.
So we need to re-record some stuff. So it really helped us to think and relax.
And
can I just respond to that, Philip? Thank you so much for that piece of feedback. I want to say that strive for excellence, not perfection with regards to your podcast. So strive to be excellent and do the most excellent work you can. And know that sometimes the interesting part of the podcast is those imperfect moments. So it doesn't have to be perfect. Just do the most excellent podcast you can. Sorry, Adam, you were going to ask. You were going to tell me.
No, with me, it's for sure the same thing as Philip, because I remember the first few times we did this, I was like sick out of my mind. I didn't know what people were going to think. I was really stressed about it. And I think the fact that I could just relax and realize I don't care what people think. I'll do what's better for me and what's better for the podcast.
Is to do it, to just do it, give it a try. we need more Canadian podcasts. We need more of our voices out there. Our stories are important. Our opinions are important. The things that we like to talk about are as important as the American podcasters who are out there, who are great, and the British podcasters who are out there and great. And I would say that Canadian podcasts are as great, if not better. And I might be biased in saying that, but we have some great podcasts out there.
I
So-
agree.
Me too, but I just wanted to ask, what
Yes.
are some of your podcasts for any of our listeners who would be interested in any of your podcasts?
Okay, so this is a great question. Thank you, Philip. So my first podcast, as I mentioned, is called The Insomnia Project, and that's for if you have anxiety or you cannot sleep. It's 26 minutes of calm conversation. And the reason I say that is the sort of information of the show. You need to be able to tell what your show is about, what your podcast is about in a sentence or two. So I'm going to do that for each of my podcasts, okay? So the next podcast I did, I actually direct and produce. It is called Every Place is the Same. And it's hosted by this wonderful performer and friend of mine named Daniela Vlaskalik. And it's a 10-minute travel challenge podcast that proves every single place is the same as every other place. So Daniela will interview a guest and say, where are you from? And they might say Montreal. We had one from Montreal. And then she'll say, where's a place that you've been to that you've really enjoyed? And they might say Vienna, Austria. And then Daniela will ask, do you think these two cities are the same? Most of the times the guest will say no. And then Daniela will have 10 minutes to prove that those two cities are exactly the same. And that podcast is kind of a fun comedy podcast. And its ultimate goal is to prove that we're all more similar than we are different.
Mhm.
Then I have a podcast called Eat and Drink that I host with CBC host Ali Hassan, where we talk about food and drink. It might be a little bit, there might be some questionable content because I make cocktails on that, so it might not be appropriate for the students here. And Ali talks about food, but it is a fun podcast that we do. And then I do a daily podcast with my wife and another good friend called Born on This Day, where we talk about every single famous person who was born on the day that you listen. So if you listen today, you will hear the famous people who were born on this day.
Very interesting.
And
Thank
also, where are we able to find your podcasts?
Oh, so great question. I should have said that you can find all my podcasts on anywhere you listen to podcasts. So you want your podcast. So for any prospective podcasters out there, you want to make sure you put your podcast on a platform that will send it out to different places where people can listen to podcasts. So Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or iTunes, as it was formerly called. You have Spotify. Any place that people really listen to podcasts, you want to make sure that your podcast is available there. And it's a very simple thing to do.
Yeah. So I was just wondering, why do you podcast? We've heard how you got into it, but why do you do it?
Oh, that's such a great question, Philip. I guess the reason I do podcasts is because it's a way to use my creative ability to reach people. And it's a way to perform. And I love to perform. I'm not performing on stage using my physicality, but I'm using my voice. And sometimes you get a stronger connection with the listener or your audience because it's just your voice. They can't see the faces you make or the weird things that you do, but they just get involved to what they hear. And I sometimes think that is one of the greatest ways to communicate. Now, let me ask you this, Philip, why do you podcast?
Well, I podcast because I like sharing the information with our community in middle school, like saying the lunches and what type of day it is. That's fun as well. But I really enjoy doing it. It's just fun.
And let me ask you this, Adam. What is the most rewarding aspect of podcasting for you?
I think the most rewarding aspect is just the fact that like I could go home, have my parents listen to it, and have people tell me it was great. I think it feels nice at the end of the day when you finish it and you know you're proud of what you did.
Are you finding it easier as you go? Like you were mentioning, Adam, how at first you were a little bit worried about your voice and doing stuff, and now the more you do it, are you finding it easier?
Yeah, I think it's 100% easier now.
Yeah.
I think now that it's like I'm comfortable with it, I'm used to it, it's gotten easier to do, and I'm just better at it, I'd say.
I'll say this too. I am an actor. I've been an actor for many years. When I hear the sound of my own voice, I always shudder a little bit. But the more I do it, the more I'm like, you know what? My voice needs to be heard. It's as great and as bad as the next person. So that's something that always goes through my mind.
Yeah, I get the same feeling sometimes too. Now, you just said you're an actor, so tell us about it.
Oh, okay. So I'm a comedic actor who specializes in improv. So improvisation is sort of like just coming up with things on the spot, and that's really lended well when I have guests on the podcast. And I've noticed that you're both using a technique that I mentioned in a book, which is great, which is asking open-ended questions. You're not asking me a yes or no question. You're asking me a question that just allows me to speak, and I'm hopefully doing the same when I ask you questions. But yeah, I've always had a love for performing. I love making people laugh. It's something that really speaks to me. And some people say I'm good at it. Certainly, I've worked with your teacher, Mrs. Martin, a few times. I should say Ms. Martin a few times. And I've always had a great experience on stage and performing. And it's just been a wonderful thing in my life, and it's really spoken to me. There's often that expression, if you do something you love for work, you won't work a day in your life. And I often feel like that when I'm on stage or when I'm on television.
Thank you very much.
Oh, the pleasure was all mine. If there's one thing you could tell your fellow students if they think about getting into podcasts, what would that be?
To enjoy it, not get stressed out about it. That's really what I'd tell them, if anything.
I would say if they're going to get into it, they're probably doing it because they want to do it and they enjoy it. So I would say same reasons of Philip. Do it because you want to.
And if you need help, find my book in your library. It's called 25 Things I Wish I Knew Before I Started My Podcast. Thank you both so much for allowing me to be on your podcast. I wish you both so much success.
Yep, you too. Thank you.
Thank you.